Welcome to History and Lowell. On this very special edition, I am Maritza Grooms, and I am from Lowell. And I'm here with my favorite professor, the great Robert Forrant.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you very much because you're one of the very few people who I know who have been using ally as a verb probably your whole life, and you use your position of power and privilege to uplift people like me. So I genuinely appreciate you.
I think this is a mutual good relationship to have because I get as much as I give for sure. No question about it. Let's not start crying. Let's deal with
I know. I know. We can gush about each other all day.
Yeah.
So as we like to do, we talk about history and Lowell, and then we bring it out to the broader context and current events. The world is on fire, Bob. How did we get here? What's happening?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about being a historian of this particular history and really thinking about this, it's profound in a way to realize how stupid a country we are when it comes to our own history, and that we always either feign surprise or really are surprised when something happens like Minneapolis, and then the response from around the country and eventually around the world. And it's sometimes as though people have been in this historical cocoon and don't understand history from 1619, right? Which is way too far to go back in the half hour that we have. But I think that the history, I feel like in a way, and the same thing's happening in Britain now, where they're pulling down a lot of statues to colonialism around England right now. And this has awakened this, particularly amongst young people, which is really great to see. And I think people are just finally beginning to understand the depth and I use the word wisely, the depth of the depravity in keeping literally and figuratively a knee on the neck of African Americans and people of color. And watching that video, it's one particular person, obviously, Mr. Floyd, but it's representative of this longer history that's inescapable in Lowell and in Massachusetts, particularly in a place like Boston, and around the country and around the world.
For sure. Yes. Oh, gosh. I want to take a second to actually acknowledge the youth right now, because I think you brought that up, right? Young people, we're all isolated right now because there's still a global pandemic. I think people are forgetting. Let's just remind the folks at home that's still happening. Cases are now on the rise because we're reopening for our economy. We'll get to that. But because we're all home, we're all on our social media, right? We're all probably more plugged in than we've ever been before because we can't go outside. Young people, my young people in particular, shout out to Lowell youth, are like out here using social media as a social activist tool. And that has been really, really awesome to see, but also a little scary that the young people just get it in a way that people my age still don't, or people even maybe a few years. I have people that I know who are 10 years older than me who still can't wrap their brains around white privilege and, how oppressive systems work. And my young people are out here sharing so much information that breaks it down in the simplest ways. And they're like 13, 15, 18 years old. And they're also getting mad that people are slowing up right now. And why do you think that people are slowing down?
I think there's in a lot of ways, everything that we're dealing with all coming together. I think it's almost too much for people in general to get their brains around. And I think that younger people because of the fact that I do think this is the case with students of mine that I'm in touch with and been in touch with over the end of the semester and whatnot. People aren't used to being closed up. They're in their social media, but they're also social people as well. They like hugging each other when they see each other. They like being out and about. And I think that not being able to do any of that, I feel like, particularly like people who are seniors in high school, like they've missed all this stuff.
Mm.
And I think it's really given them pause to think about, wow, what kind of a world are we launching ourselves into?
Mm.
And what's our future going to be like? And so it was bad enough with the pandemic in a way, but then if you're, African American student in Lowell High, Latinx student in Lowell High, second generation, Southeast Asian immigrant and or refugee from an African country or whatever, you're feeling that, and you're in a high school that's 65, 70, 75%, depending on who you listen to, not white, and you're in an institution that's 90 to 95% white when it comes to managing and teaching.
Mm.
And so there's an incongruity there, right? And so when you listen to people in the larger society talking about systemic racism, you don't have to go far to see it. It's like, so again, for somebody that doesn't want to see it, you can, if you're white, you can live your life and not see it, should you so choose, or you can wake up. But if you're a young person in an institution like Lowell High or like South Boston High or like Eastie or, Cambridge Rindge and Latin or whatever it would be, and I don't know what the hiring is there, but I'm sure it's top heavy. The ratio is top heavy, opposite of what it should be working toward.
Mm-hmm.
Then you see it and you feel it every day. And so when something like what happened in Minneapolis takes place, you've seen that, in downtown Lowell when school gets out. You haven't obviously seen it to that extreme, but you've seen the physicality of people in power and authority, in the way they think about you, the way they look at you. And that's, so again, I think that for younger people, it just hits you over the head. Somebody that this has happened to, somebody that's been stopped while walking black. All these things, they're in you. And then when you see all of this, it's like, wow, it's not just me. I'm not crazy.
Right. Right. And also seeing probably people that you thought were friends or people that, you thought understood. I have a lot of young folks who have been messaging me and saying, I thought my friend got it. I thought my friend saw me, and now she's mad because I'm posting Black Lives Matter, or even family members. And I've had to help kind of facilitate those conversations for young people with family members who have, I had a young person actually get in trouble for posting something like, Black people built this country, so of course they have the right to burn it down. And her mom actually got mad, which, she said, well, you're inciting violence. And then the young person said, well, hasn't this whole country been instigating violence against Black people since they brought them here this whole time? And I don't know what her mom responded, but at least that conversation is being had.
Mm-hmm.
But still, where is the support for young people and when we're isolated in these environments, right?
And I also think, just on what you just said, it's really, again, I can't imagine, right? I mean, I had a son and a daughter, and I talked to them about if the police stopped them when they were driving, but he didn't have the talk the same way as if I was an African American male and talking to my daughter and my son. So I can't even begin to understand what that means. I understand the fear and I understand all of that, but it's not intrinsic in me. But when people talk about that, and so, and they go, well, the police don't do that. Well, it's easy for me to say. The police, but again, it's not reality. And so every once in a while, these things like what we're seeing now, this big sort of movement causes people to have to stop and think. And then you do have to make some decisions about how you're gonna deal with this going forward. Are you gonna try to go back to normal? I mean, I love people talking, let's go back to normal. No, normal got us this.
Exactly.
Um, and so when people say, I have the same kind of conversation, because when people say to me, well, I can't wait till we get back to normal, and I'll usually say, well, normal sucked um, for 90% of the world. Let's be realistic here. And so, no, we need to take the opportunity we have right now to really think long and hard about how to redefine who we are and how we redefine as a country what's at our core. People get really upset, and I just I mean, maybe like you, I just like in social media, I just like don't bother anymore. I just unfriend, because
Yeah,
it's that's not the conversation that I want to have. If
right.
I have to like explain that, then like okay, go away.
Yeah, I had to
And
stop
it feels weird
explaining.
as an
Yeah.
educator. I shouldn't think that way, but these people who are quote unquote educated,
Mm,
and have had an opportunity to sit and read and be paid to sit and read, so they have no excuse. As
right.
opposed to, I think the other thing that it strikes me is that for a lot of young people, this has created the opportunity for them, and see what you think about this, to actually demand more of the history. Because
Yes.
it's like this rapid change of events, and then you hear about Tulsa, or you hear about this, or you hear about what the hell was Tulsa, right? And so I
Yeah.
think this is a good opportunity for people who do the kind of education like you do to say, whoa, there's a whole new field of play here where people are curious. People want to know what to read. People want to know what to look at.
Yes, 100%. I agree with you. And that's actually another thing I've seen my young people start doing. They're sharing things like, did you know this happened? Did you know about Black Wall Street? Did you know about, all of these things? And they're like, hey, don't you have a show, History and Lowell? Where can I find that? And they want to know the history. You're so right, Bob. And it blows me away that young people are so eager to learn right now. Just I'm always excited about anybody wanting to learn, but the fact that they're not in
Hmm.
school and they
Right.
want to learn because they understand that to know where we're coming from, that's the only way that we're going to make a change. We have to know where we came from.
Yeah, you got to know the history. I mean, there's a demonstration, I believe, on Monday at Lowell High, and that's one of the things that young people that are organizing that are raising in terms of like the curriculum. And it reminded me when I was looking at that stuff this morning of, I mean, when I was 50 years ago when I was in college, there was no so-called Black Studies programs. There was no African American history. And one of the demands I was making as a student in 1968 in Boston was, we need to have in colleges and universities, African American studies. We need to be learning this stuff. We were still being taught. I mean, I was a student, undergrad history major, in 1967, 68, being taught that slaves were happy. Um,
Oh,
and and that they were happy because they didn't revolt. And then as the history changed, for me, it was like, wait, like all this history that I didn't know, now because African American students, Black students, and others were demanding this history as it started coming into being, then I said, oh, this is why they didn't want this to be taught.
mhm.
Because it throws a monkey wrench into the whole mythology.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and so I think we're flipping back to that now. But I get, like, for me, like thinking about this now, and again, thinking 50 years ago, and sort of the space in between, and how much we've learned and changed, but how little we've learned and changed, right? I mean, I can't get my brain around it, right? Because we know better. And yet here
But
I
you're
made a
better.
list just before we came on of like the last few years, right? Just to sort of recall. So Trayvon Martin,
Mm,
right? That was in 2012. That's one I'll never forget because his birthday is February 5, the same as mine. So
mhm.
for as long as I'm on the planet, every birthday, that's what I'm not posting about my birthday. I'm posting about he should be having his birthday. But then
Mm,
Ferguson is 2014.
yep.
Tamir Rice is 2014. Freddie Gray, 2015. One that I had not heard of that I saw this morning, this young woman, 28 years old, Fort Worth, Texas, Adatina Jefferson, was shot through her bedroom window by the police in October of 2019. That one I had not seen. Breonna Taylor, obviously,
Yep.
March 2020, just a little while back.
Arrest her murderers.
Yeah, I mean, you have Rand Paul
Mm-hmm.
blocking last week a bill in the Senate to make lynching a federal crime, holding it up in the Senate. I mean, and so on the face of it, like, what's Rand Paul doing? But then saying, why in 2020 isn't that? Why hasn't that already been, why isn't that a federal crime?
Exactly.
Like, what are we doing?
What are we doing? And the removal of Confederate flags all of a sudden now too. All the NASCAR drivers that are boycotting. Bye. We know what we know what that stands for, and you do too. You know what it stands for.
Don't let the door hit you on the way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's important to even understand the history of policing. Where did policing even come from? Do people really know that? Didn't it start as slave catchers?
A lot of
right?
it was, yeah. And I mean, the system in the South was really set up to retrieve property, essentially.
And then it was to enforce.
Those folks came to Lowell looking for fugitives. I mean, they showed up in Lowell in the 1850s looking for fugitives, deputized in the South, paid by plantation owners, and came to Lowell looking for fugitives. And there were many fugitives scattered around, living and working in the city. And so Lowell, I say we because I'm sitting here in Lowell, but I mean, Lowell is connected to that long and deep story through the cotton that came here and as well fugitives who made their way through here, oftentimes staying only a little while and then going further north, being fearful of being caught. Boston's history is that there's a debate, which for the life of me I still don't understand, about changing the name on Faneuil Hall.
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand that completely either.
Well, Peter Faneuil, right? I mean, you know who, and like, why is this, right? Like, but the Globe will be all about, like, we need to get the Confederate statues down, but I haven't seen them weigh in very much on why does it make sense to change the name of Faneuil Hall, right? Again, it's this, what are we doing?
We just want to do what makes us comfortable and makes us feel good, so we can pat ourselves on the back and say, look, we're ending racism. I acknowledged it. But that's not, we're still complicit in the system. This whole system, capitalism, is based off of white supremacy. You and I had a really great series last year, the Lowell National Historical Parks, where we talked about all of these things. We showed, can you remind me the name of the documentary?
Juneteenth.
No, the other one, but that's an important one too.
It's right on my.
Sorry to put you on the spot like that.
No, the one on immigration. What's it? Harvest of Empire.
Yes, Harvest of Empire.
I saw it behind me.
And we talked about all of this. We've been trying to inform the public about all of this and how everything is directly tied to, based off of slavery. That's it, everything. Even as time progressed, we know that the police were also used to reinforce segregation and things like that. We know, and we know about the prison industrial complex. We know about all of this. And for all of these, like, very, very minimal, like, too little too late efforts, it really just begs the question, do you actually believe that racism is a public health crisis?
Right.
Marty Walsh.
Mayor Walsh declared it today, right?
Exactly. But he also reopened Massachusetts, right? Where cases are on the rise.
Yeah. I mean, there was, I forget the guy's name. I don't even want to remember the name. Maybe you saw it, but in Ohio, there was a physician who's also a city councilor in some city, I forget which city in Ohio, who said in a hearing, who wondered out loud in a hearing whether his words, I'm going to use his words, whether colored people are getting COVID-19 more than white people because they don't know how to wash their hands.
I'm just going to take a
Yeah.
moment.
And so this is also a physician. So the idea of like medicine and sort of I mean, and again, for people that don't think African Americans get treated differently, especially women when they go to the hospital. I mean, it's clear when you look at deaths in childbirth, you get all that data, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Oh yeah.
again, like if you don't get it, then you're not getting it because you're not trying,
Exactly.
right? That I mean, I do think. I mean, I thought about this again, thinking of the show. The president, in an odd way, is doing people like us a favor by going to Tulsa
Mm.
on June 19th. Because what it's done is it started a larger conversation about Black Wall Street and what happened in Tulsa in June 1 of 1921, and the white destruction, the burning to the ground of one of the most prosperous African American communities at the time in the country. And that he's going on June 19th has also raised the question of Juneteenth, right? Which a lot of my friends, when I was writing about it the other day, don't know what that is. So it gave me an opportunity to say, well, this is what this is. So maybe you should share for the audience
Yeah.
that history a little bit. So at least we've done that today too.
Absolutely. So Juneteenth is the day that the last slaves were actually free, 1865. That's 2 years after Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, January 1, 1863. We know that he signed it. It wasn't until June 19th, 1865, that the last slave was actually free
In Texas.
in Texas. So that's why there's actually a lot of celebrations happening in the Black community constantly, all the time for Juneteenth. Franklin Park, there's always one. I feel like ever since I mean, probably way before I was born, because I've went to it. And I honestly did not understand the significance of it when I was younger because, kids sometimes aren't really paying attention. But I know that I've never, like, there was a point in time when I was a teenager, and I think it was because I watched so much that movie Dazed and Confused, like over and over again. It's just a cult classic, And there's this really great line where the teacher goes in, about while you're out there celebrating all this bicentennial brouhaha, don't forget what you're actually celebrating. And it's that the fact that a bunch of aristocratic white men, slave-owning white men, didn't want to pay their taxes. That's what the 4th of July is. And we still celebrate that.
They
And
destroyed
everybody was not
property,
free.
right?
They destroyed
They destroyed
property.
property. God forbid. Not to be glib about destroying property, but
Right.
yeah, but again, him, and so, I mean, I don't necessarily think he understood the significance of the day, but people around him who want to give cues to his crowds absolutely fully understood, because they could have gone anywhere else in the country any other day in late June.
Oh
And
yeah.
June 19th in Tulsa. And then today he announced August 27th in Jacksonville is when he's giving his acceptance speech for the nomination. And on that day in Jacksonville in 1960, there's a very ugly incident known in history books as the Battle of the Axe Handles, where whites chase African Americans around Jacksonville with bats and axe handles, beating people up.
And that started as a peaceful protest as well,
Yeah,
right?
while the police stand by, they're peacefully protesting their attack. The police stand by, and the Florida Historical Society, of all places, has done this pretty good online exhibition of the history to expose it. And so I'm thinking, like, wow, Tulsa, June 19th, Florida, August 27th. I mean, it's sort of like, just like, what are you saying, right? And then somebody reminded me that when Ronald Reagan got the nomination, the first place he went after receiving the nomination was to Philadelphia, Mississippi, which was one of the most violently racist cities in Mississippi, in all of the South and in all of the country. And that's where he made his first speech. And so it's very similar in terms of these sort of very blatant kind of acts, right? That really, and again, I posted some of this stuff and I had people like call me or text me, do you really think like it was really done intentionally? I said, well, like, how can it not be?
Right.
How can it not be? Like, there's so many other places he could go, right? And there's so many other days of the week and days in the month of June he could do it. So that you go to Tulsa. Tulsa's been in the news because June 1, and just went by, and there was a lot of stuff like telling that history. June 9th, it's like, no, of course.
Of course. Of course.
So I'm thinking there'll probably be some massive, massive march in Tulsa on June 19th. There will be some I'm sure there are already people planning some large oppositional activity. My guess is there'll probably be something in Boston to coincide with the exact time he's giving whatever talk he's giving on June 19th. I would be really surprised if there wasn't a lot of activity all around the country that day, just because of he's trying to use the symbolism in a really horrible way.
Yep. And that's what he's been doing since he was campaigning. We already know that. Since before he was campaigning, calling for the whole birther conspiracy with Obama, right?
Yep.
And we also know that there's so much footage of him telling police officers, you don't have to be nice, rough them up. And we know that didn't he call the National Guard or like encourage mayors to call the National Guard in to squash these protests?
Yeah, he basically told them they would be looked upon as weak and as sissies if they didn't get control over their cities.
Oh boy. My favorite response to peaceful protests against police violence is police violence. Thank you for proving our point. Abolish the police. That in no way reflects the ideas, beliefs, or anything that LTC stands for. I just need to say that. But it is 100% my belief. And I really hate that time is running out here for us, because I feel like you and I could be talking about this for probably a couple hours, really, if we wanted to. Yeah. One person I would want to shout out just before we end, and I know there's only literally a minute left, a Black woman in Lowell who has been community organizing for years. We've been trying to do this. She founded the Kindred Project, and our whole mission was to unite, uplift, and empower the Black and Latinx communities of Lowell. That was our original mission. We had to step back because we realized we can't speak for everybody. And then we revamped our mission, and it still is to unite and uplift and empower communities, Black communities in Lowell, and work with other melanated people to do that work. So I think I just wanted to shout her out, because I know that she's been trying to bring attention to all of the racism in Lowell for many, many years. And it's almost like she's been screaming to the void. So I have to shout out my sister friend and my partner in power, Masada Jones. I have to put some respect on her name on this episode.
Say her name.
Yes, exactly. Say her name, because she's been doing this work. And with that, we do have to wrap it up. Bob, you are wonderful. Thank you so much for educating all of us. And thank you all for tuning in. I hope you learned something today. I hope that you go out and read a book. For crying out loud, just read something that is not what you are thinking, and come back and tune in next time. History and Lowell.
Thank you. Be well, everybody.